and say, am I doing ministry as my call, or am I doing ministry as my profession? And there's something absolutely different in your walk in life when you are not a Christian professionally, but you are a Christian out of conviction. Shakespeare said, to thine own self be true. And so many people, you got to ask yourself, particularly preachers have to ask themselves, if you weren't in ministry, would you be able to drive like that? If you weren't in ministry, would you be able to live that kind of opulent and decadent lifestyle? And so at some point, where is the marriage between your charisma, your character, and your conviction? And what happened for me, and what has happened to a lot of people in ministry, is that my church became my wife, and my wife became my mistress. And at some point, you got to put into accountability that your household is your first ministry. And if you lose your household and you're preaching to 10,000 people, it is of no consequence. The greatest warfare of every person who is in the public specter is, what I'm doing, am I doing it for image, or am I doing it for integrity? And every person has to make that decision when I walk out of my house in the morning. Who am I getting dressed for? Am I getting dressed for the image of what people perceive me to be, or am I getting dressed for the integrity of what God has called me to be? God asked Solomon a very critical question. Do you want fame? Do you want popularity? Do you want militaristic strength? And Solomon says, I want wisdom. And the Lord says, if you want wisdom, then I'll give you everything else. And we're living in a postmodern church age where we are rearing people to pray for getting a car and getting clothes and getting promotion, and nobody is praying for common sense. I can pray, and much of the foreclosures that have happened in the black community are attributable to the black church, because we lied to people for 15 years and said the sign of your favor is what kind of car you got, what kind of house you live in, and what kind of check you're cashing. But when those same saints had their house foreclosed, we no longer said God is the one that put you in that house, and it's the church's responsibility to help you maintain it. When they lost the house because they didn't read the fine print on the bubble that was getting ready to come the 3 to 5 years down, then the enemy is busy. At some point, we got to deal with the hard nuts and bolts of making some common sense decisions so that we can stop self-sabotaging behavior. The reality is, for black Christians, we got to be honest enough to say the devil never made us sleep with anybody. The devil never made us smoke anything, and the devil never made us drink anything. But we are given the very basic fundamental principle of theology is the theology of free will. We get to choose. God doesn't even force himself on us. He said, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If you let me in, then I'm going to come in. Otherwise, Jesus will be guilty of breaking and entering. So every person has got to make the critical decision, got to make the critical choice. Am I, in fact, going to be popular, or am I going to be smart? Here are my 3 little girls who are with me. Come on. Grace Angel in the door. And so this is really where you put into perspective for yourself, every day. Am I preaching just so that 3, 10, 15,000 people can say, preach black man? Or at the end of the day, these 3 young ladies are going to grow up and will not respect the church because of how it is that I disrespected their mother. At some point, I got to make up in my mind, is I'm living a life of integrity, or am I living a charade for the stage? And so the 3 of them made me really recalibrate, what am I doing ministry for? Am I doing ministry just to put them in private school, just to make sure that they wearing Gap for kids? Am I doing ministry just so that they can go to ballet class and go swimming? Or am I living a ministry so that when these 3 young ladies grow up, I want a man of Christian conviction that didn't act a bipolar lifestyle, that was in fact preaching one thing on Sunday morning, but did not live that same thing after the benediction was over. And so at the end of the day, my real ministry is not to the 10,000 people in Baltimore at Empowerment Temple, or the millions of people on TBN, but at the end of the day, my ministry really bottoms down to these 3 little girls. And if at the end of the day, I have reared and lived such a life that they say Christianity is worth something because of how it is that my father lived after the benediction, then no sermon I can preach will ever measure that. My grandmother of sainted memory said, I'd rather see a sermon than hear one any day. And so I really hope that every person would really win the war over image and live a life of integrity, because at the end of the day, our children are watching and looking to see will our actions speak louder than our words. Thank you so much